Hello, and welcome to Lab 8, the digestive system. The digestive system makes up everything from the mouth all the way down through to the anus. So let's start with the teeth. The teeth is something that everyone needs to learn, especially those who are interested in the dental hygienist program here at COD or looking at dentistry other places. So your front teeth, two on top in the middle, two on the bottom in the middle, are your incisors. So we'd have an incisor here, another incisor here. The one next to that would be your canine. Your canine are the more pointy teeth that we have. From there, we have premolars. We have one premolar before we get to three molars here. This is, if you notice, a juvenile, so it's a child. So you can see teeth that have not come up yet. Children tend to, or do have less teeth than adults. Let's look at the inside of the tooth now. The enamel of our teeth is that white outside part that we can see. That would be that enamel on our teeth. The inside of our tooth is made of what is known as dentin. Dentin is stronger than our bones. Dentin is a very, very strong substance. That's what makes our teeth so hard, so we can chew on hard things. Those people who like to eat ice. Inside, there's an opening. This opening is known as that pulp cavity or pulp root cavity. Inside of here, you're going to find blood vessels. So you're going to find an artery, a vein, and you're also going to find a nerve. So we have a nerve that travels all the way up into our tooth. The neck of our tooth is kind of this little indentation area here that you can see. That is where our tooth, the visible portion of our tooth, comes in contact with our gums that goes down into either that mandible or that maxilla. The cementum is the outside portion of the tooth. New color. Outside portion of the tooth that is under the gums and inside of the bone. That's that cementum that we have. I don't have any good pictures of that periodontal ligament. Unfortunately, the periodontal ligament there's a little ligament that's holding it, like travels the entire length. There's tons of little strands to it that goes down the entire length of the tooth, going down into the bone that's helping to hold this tooth in its socket or in its place. That's that periodontal ligament. Salivary glands. We have three main salivary glands that help to produce that saliva that goes into our mouth that moistens food and helps to start breaking down food before we swallow it down. The parotid glands, that's kind of right in front of your ear. You can kind of feel it. If you kind of press lightly down on it, you can sort of feel it because it sits actually outside of the muscles. We also have this submandibular, that mandible. Sub means below, mandibular, that mandible. So it sits kind of underneath that mandible. You can see it from this view here. The other one we have here, you can see that submandibular one much better. But here you also see that sublingual, sub, under, or below, lingual, that tongue. So this one's found specifically under that tongue. the sublingual. These are the three different salivary glands that are helping to start break down your food from the start. Now let's look at the upper digestive tract. Again, we've got some things that are going to remain the same, including that hard palate that's made up of that maxilla and that palatine bone, that soft palate, that uvula. Again, those are all staying the same. We have the tongue, the lingual frenulum. Lingual, again, is that tongue. Underneath your tongue, you have this little piece of tissue that kind of comes up in the middle that kind of helps to hold your tongue to the floor of your mouth. That's that lingual frenulum. We still have that oropharynx and that laryngopharynx. Those are still the same from the respiratory system. Then we can start to see that esophagus. There's that oropharynx, that laryngopharynx. And then that esophagus that travels back behind that trachea. Now, if we look at the digestive organs, we'll start with the stomach. We have two separate lobes of the liver. We have a right lobe and a left lobe. There's usually some ligament that is drawn through here. I think I've got it on some other pictures later that kind of shows that division of that right and that left side. This is pointing at the gallbladder, but you can't really see it. I've got some better pictures. Then we have our small intestine. Our small intestine is made up of three parts. We have the duodenum, which we can't really see because it's hidden beneath this large intestine here, this kind of gray piece. We have the jejunum, which is kind of off over here a little bit, maybe a little bit that way. And then we have the ileum that kind of makes up this bottom portion. The duodenum is the shortest area. I've got pictures that show that duodenum, but then we get that jejunum. And then we have that ileum. There we go. There. On our large intestine is separated off into different areas. We are going to have our ascending colon. Well, the first part is technically the cecum. Let's start there. The cecum. Here, it's kind of that cecum area. Before we go into that ascending colon, then we get that transverse colon, that descending colon, descending coming back down, that sigmoid colon. It's sigmoid because it kind of comes down and around, kind of makes a little, somebody thought it looked like a sigmoid, so that's where the name kind of came from. The tinea coli is this kind of tissue that forms that line that's kind of traveling across. Here you can see it again here. That's that tinea coli. And then we have house straw. So a house straw is kind of this from here to here, where you see these little indentations from here to here. I drew one from here to here. That is considered from one little indentation to the next little indentation. That gives us our house straw. This is one little area that kind of works to churn and move and push things along. So if we take out some of the organs from here, we take out the liver, we take out the stomach, the large and small intestines, now we can see the pancreas. And we see the duodenum, actually, because here's the duodenum. So you can see this duodenum is this short. That's it. That's all it does, is it comes and wraps around the head of the pancreas. Yes, I was looking for the pancreas. Sorry. So we have the head of the pancreas. You can see the body of the pancreas. We have the tail of the pancreas. Those we can see from this image. Now, if we come to the stomach, I know these pictures kind of jump around on this lab sheet. So that stomach is on the front side labeled as D on the lab handout. So we have this here is labeled as the cardiac sphincter. This can also be known as the lower esophageal sphincter. The first part of the stomach is known as the cardiac region. The next part, kind of this upper area up here, is known as the fundus. Food sits up in the fundus for quite a while. I think it sits up there for close to an hour. Then we have the body of the stomach. Then we have what is known as the pyloric antrum. If you notice in the pyloric antrum, this area is coming down smaller from what the rest of the stomach size is. And then we have a sphincter, that pyloric sphincter that is allowing food, or it's not food anymore, it's chyme, to enter into that duodenum, the first part of that small intestine. All of these little folds and little bend, like wrinkles in the stomach, those are known as rugae. We have that rugae that allows that stomach to kind of expand and stretch. Our stomach is on the smaller side, we have this lesser curvature. And on the larger side, we have this greater curvature. Two different areas on that stomach. Now here you can see that whole small intestine, or large intestine, sorry. It's facing away, so it'd be like it'd be facing, because the cecum is technically on that right side. So that cecum is that very first part of that large intestine. At the bottom of the cecum, we have the appendix. Again, you can kind of see it better here than we did in other pictures before. It looks like a little worm. We get to that ascending colon. You can't quite see that transverse colon from here, but you see that descending colon. You see that sigmoid colon start to kind of curve in. It's going to go down to form that anus. You see that tinea coli traveling along. So that tinea coli is kind of that tissue that forms that kind of line that travels along that intestine. You can also see from here to here, one little indentation to the next indentation. That's my house straw again. So in our small intestine, we've got a lot going on. As you can see, we've got this villus, which is also, or villi. These are little projections that come off of that small intestine, kind of throughout that whole wall of that small intestine, because there's a lot of things. It creates a larger surface area for more things to be absorbed. We have Peyer's patches, or also known as aggregated lymph nodes or nodules. That's this blue area that I'm coloring even more blue. We also have lacteals. These lacteals, remember how I mentioned in the lymphatic system that our lymphatic system helps to absorb fats that we are trying to digest? That's with the lymphatic system. These lacteals right here, can't see what I just drew. These lacteals right here, that's your lymphatic system there to absorb the fats from your diet. Now we got our liver. Here is a really good view of that gallbladder. That gallbladder is a little sac that we store bile in. Our liver makes the bile, and then it sends it to the gallbladder to be stored until we need it. Again, you see that right lobe of the liver, you see that left lobe of the liver. You see that hepatic portal vein. You notice how it's purple in this image? This hepatic portal vein. This is what's carrying the nutrients from your digestive system to your liver to be stored or sent out to wherever it needs to go before that blood returns back to the heart. So usually blood goes out to those tissues and then it goes straight back to the heart. The digestive system sends all its blood to the liver first before it goes back to the heart. We see the bile duct. We have the cystic duct. The cystic duct is what takes the bile from the liver down to the gallbladder. And then when that bile is needed from the gallbladder, that gallbladder can kind of contract and push bile into that common hepatic duct. That common hepatic duct is going to come and it's going to actually take that bile and put it into that duodenum, that small intestine. Was looking for, make sure I've got everything here. Oh, the hepatic artery. That's what I wanted to make sure. We have the hepatic artery. Or that's the hepatic artery proper, technically. And then that should be all of it that we can see on this image. Now, if we open up the liver a little bit, now we see that ligamentum teres. That ligamentum teres is also known as that round ligament. I'll tell you, I learned it as ligamentum teres. You still hear both words being used. So kind of having an idea, knowing that is sometimes not a bad thing because things will come back to you. The hepatic portal vein. Here we see that cystic duct by that gallbladder. That's labeled out here. This picture we can see specifically, I included it because we can see the greater omentum. The greater omentum is what covers like that large intestine, small intestine. It kind of covers a lot of that abdominal area. It kind of sits right in front of a lot of those abdominal organs. I will tell you, I have seen one in a person that was awake and had a wound in her abdomen that was that deep. That greater omentum is helping to kind of cover, it's like a fatty layer that just kind of covers all of the different organs there. That's what's the important from that picture. Here we can see if we take out the liver, you got that duodenum, the first part of that small intestine. You got the stomach. You can kind of see the pancreas somewhat. Here you see that tinea coli really well. They like to keep labeling that because it's easy to see. Now, if we take out more, this labels this as the ileum and jejunum. There's that duodenum. But the jejunum is more upper area. And the ileum is more that bottom area. You can also see that pancreas. In that pancreas, you can see, since they open that pancreas, it's not the best picture. Sorry. Here's this little white line. That is that pancreatic duct. This is taking all the different digestive juices, digestive enzymes, and taking it towards that duodenum. So here's, they keep taking more organs out, we can see more things. Again, you can see that cecum, that very first part. And actually, what you can see here, of course, as soon as I zoom in, it's not that great. But here, between that ileum and that cecum, we have what is known as the ileocecal valve. This is allowing only a small amount of substance into that large intestine at a time. So that circle there, that ileocecal valve. Here you can see that appendix coming off of that cecum. Then we have that ascending colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon coming down. So let's look at some of the histology here, because this is the only way that we're going to get these different layers of some of this stuff. So some of this histology, you can see how your esophagus is that stratified squamous epithelium, because that's the type of tissue that allows for high abrasion, allows for things to kind of brush off easier. We've got lots of different layers. We kind of keep going down the esophagus, through that esophagus. You can kind of see what's going on. Here's that stomach. So this is in the fundus, so that very top part. We have some different muscular layers. We can't, like, we can see the oblique muscular layer pretty well from this image. Here we can see a bunch of parietal cells and gastric pits coming down. Here's the muscularis externa, that outer layer of that muscle. So there's lots of pictures of the stomach. Then we get into that small intestine. You can kind of see how that small intestine is simple columnar epithelium. As I mentioned, has been mentioned in Anatomy 1. This is one of the areas that it's found in. And there's those goblet cells because it's given us that mucus that we need. Here's that duodenum. That duodenum has a bunch of little kind of grooves through it. That's what we're seeing here. Those little grooves are kind of known as that plica circularis. So that plica circularis, again, it's increasing that surface area to help move things along through that duodenum. So here you can kind of see that plica circularis is all those little parts that kind of go up and all over the place here. You can still see it. There's some of that plica circularis as this tissues kind of come up and around. Here's a lot more. You can see some of that villi and that small intestine as well. So here's a bunch of those villi in the middle of them it's increasing that surface area, so there's more area to absorb different nutrients. You can still see that plica circularis as we travel through that jejunum. Still see it in there. Here's that ileum. We still have that plica circularis. So it's helping to kind of increase all of that surface area. Here you can see those Peyer's patches really well, which is our lymphatic system. So we've got lots of our lymphatic system all over the place. Here's a really nice Peyer's patch. Here we get into the large intestine. As we keep traveling along, you can kind of see as these magnify even further. Here we're in the submandibular gland, where we produce saliva. There's the word I was looking for. So we can kind of see as we get closer and closer, we can see these mucus acini. This is what is creating that mucus that creates that saliva. It's also adding digestive enzymes in there to start breaking things down. Here's that sublingual, same kind of idea. And there's our parotid, same kind of idea. Here's the pancreas. If we remember from the endocrine system, we had those pancreatic isolates. That's where we're getting our insulin and our glucagon. Now, if we come to the outside, we've got that acinar tissue. This is the kind of tissue that is creating a lot of those digestive enzymes that come from the pancreas. So that acinar tissue is where we get all of our digestive enzymes. Here's a liver lobule. We've got a liver lobule that we are looking at. Within this lobule, I'm going to zoom it in because once you zoom it in, you see things better. Those individual cells are known as those hepatocytes. You can see, looking for a good picture here, you can see those liver sinusoids, which are those little kind of openings within that liver lobule. That lobule is this entire pentagon shape there. So here, that sinusoid is kind of that little opening between those cells. Those hepatocytes are those individual cells. Here's an even better view, those sinusoids, those hepatocytes. And in the middle of each one of those, we've got a central vein. And that is everything. Thank you for listening to the digestive system. Have a wonderful day.